This happened when I was 18 years old and in a deep conflict with where I was going in life and who I was with and who I was. That being said, I tried really hard to have friends and would often overlook a lot of things for the sake of companionship. I was working in a deli at a local co-op and typically worked closing shift. Usually nights were pretty slow and we had a total of 5 people dispersed around the deli after 9 p.m. One night I was working the deli case when the overnight dishwasher approached me. Tom was about an inch or so taller than me, with greasy hair and a ponytail, and from what my coworker said, an odor that traveled with him. I would often catch him standing in the hallway that led to the dish pit, just staring at me. He stared at me just a little too long after he came up to me and asked if I wanted to get high and watch Monty Python at his place. The fact that I was stoned made me slightly less alarmed and more humored that he stared at me for such long periods of time, but I wasn't interested in doing drugs in a secluded place with someone I barely knew. Being anxious and trying to be polite, I gave him my Facebook instead of my number, knowing it would say I was in a relationship and I would not have to blurt it out that I had a boyfriend. He apologized and said he did not know and he would not have asked me out if he did. I said I would be happy to be friends, but I did not feel comfortable going to his house alone when I did not know him that well. He then asked how I was supposed to get to know him at work because he had to stay in the back. We would eventually start to take breaks at the same time. We talked a lot about our lives and the heavier things from our past. I talked about my past abuse and he talked about struggling with drug issues and the law. We would sit outside on summer nights while he smoked and I watched the stars and we'd talk about philosophy and our ambitions. We had some very thoughtful conversations, although he seemed a lot more interested in my reactions to what he said than what I said. We also messaged on Facebook frequently. He was overtly sexual and a lot of his topics of conversation, but I knew he did not have many friends to talk to, especially about his girlfriend. He occasionally made sexual comments about me, but they were mostly harmless at the beginning. He also would constantly ask me if I found him attractive. When I talked to him about it, he said he had a problem with boundaries and was insecure, but would try harder and that he was sorry. One night we hung out with a group of coworkers after work. He offered to drive me and my coworker. I accepted because I would not be alone with him, and because parking at my complex became scarce late at night. We met up with other people there and had a decent night. He was conscious about making sure I was comfortable and got me home safely. A week passed without many noteworthy events, but one night my friend and I were at the beach. It must have been around 12 or 1 a.m. when I got a text from Tom asking how to make french fries because he was too drunk. I asked my friend if she wanted to meet him and potentially get french fries and she agreed, so we drove over. When we arrived, the stove was on with nothing on it. He was stumbling all over and his girlfriend was drunk and naked in the other room. He said he wanted to go to the beach too and drive to get french fries, so we took him to get food and go to the beach with us. Tom spent the whole night asking how kinky I was, if I had ever gotten a rim job, and saying that he imagined bending me over the salad bar and saying what else he wanted to do to me. I drove him home and brushed it off, yet again assuming it was more the alcohol than him. He then progressively got worse. During one of our chats, he casually mentioned he could kill someone and feel nothing. He would flick his tongue at me when I walked by and said he wanted to change his tongue piercing to a vibrator. He would tell me what he was into and claim it was friendly and platonic, and he was not interested in me at all. Now I know what you are thinking, but sadly, I'm just as naive as the dumb person in horror movies that yell hello and walk into the darkness looking for answers. However, this is where it all starts to click in my head. Our mutual friend and coworker, Scott, overheard me talking to my friend about how everything I explained how Tom is crossing a line. Tom simply apologizes and keeps doing said creepy thing. Scott looked at me and asked, "Are you talking about Tom?" Slightly ashamed. I said yes. Scott pulls me aside and tells me in a hushed voice that Tom wanted to hang out and Scott had immediately forgotten and took a shower. When he got out of the shower, Tom was just sitting in his house waiting for him. Scott and I kept our distance from him outside of work, but made occasional small talk while we worked with him. I remained unnerved that he knew where I lived. I remained unnerved every night when I covered the salad bar and could feel a gaze. About a week or so later, he got a new girlfriend, and his harassment died down a little. It was less verbal and more just strange looks and staring at me. When I offered one of my male coworkers a ride home, Tom stared at me the whole rest of the night until we left. A different night, I gave another one of my male coworkers my number and told him we should hang out sometime. Sometime after that, I was in the back gathering supplies to stock the espresso bar, and Tom came up to me and cornered me. He started asking why I gave my coworker my number and asking if I wanted to have sex with him. I politely responded that it was friendly and pushed him back. I could always feel him watching me. About a night later, I was talking to that same coworker when Tom interjected and said, and I quote,
"Do you know what the difference between sexual harassment and what I do to you is?"
That was the last straw that broke the camel's back, and I reported it to management and blocked him the next day. He was talked to and told he could not talk to me at work unless it was about work and work only. Management decided it was a good plan against my wishes to have this talk right before we started our shift together. Scott ended up coming in and standing by to make sure nothing happened. He claimed he had no clue why I reported him and called me a bitch to our mutual friends. He also quit about a week later because there were too many dishes. Thanks for the nightmares and bringing up past trauma I told you about, Tom. Let's not meet again. My story takes place 19 years ago. I am a female and I was 16 at the time. I like to think that I am strong, but I couldn't take on two young men, so it begins with my mother and stepfather, and leaving my 17-year-old sister and I alone. They did this quite often. My parents were not winning any parenting awards. My sister and I didn't get along either. She was a nasty piece of work. Luckily, she decided to go stay at a friend's house while my parents were away. I was nervous about being alone, so I had my boyfriend staying with me. He was a dickhead, but I'm glad he was there. One night, Brett and I were at my house, and we had just started messing around when I heard a really loud knock at the door. My mom was in the basement, but at the landing area between the stairs. There was a window that I could see the stairs that led up to our front porch. I could see two people standing there, and just as I was peeking out to see them better, one of them saw me. I remember feeling the breath sucked out of my chest. There were two young men. It was almost midnight, and I had no idea who the hell they were. The guy that saw me let his friend know, and they both looked in the window and asked me to come to the door. My boyfriend had gone upstairs to open the door, and I remember freaking out because I had told him not to. He was one of those guys that thought he was a tough guy and believed he could beat up anyone. He was telling the guys to leave just as I joined him at the door. They saw me and called me by my name and asked me to let them in. Brett told them to fuck off. One guy, I think he said his name was West or Les or something like that, said, "Come outside. We just want to talk to you," to my boyfriend. I said, "No thanks. We are going to bed," and shut the door. I was really confused and getting very frightened. They stood at my doorstep for a few minutes, then started knocking around. Wes explained to me through the door that he was my sister's friend, and that she had told him I was alone at home, and that they should come by. I knew my sister and I believed him. They did not, however, make me stupid. I told them to leave. They started kicking the door. It was shaking, and I seriously feared that it would not hold up. I was so scared that I ran into my kitchen to call the police. I was assured that they would be there very soon and to lock the doors.
and they stayed on the phone. Meanwhile, Brett was still yelling at them, which only served to piss these guys off more. I begged him to shut up, but he would not listen to me. I was locking all the doors and windows upstairs while Brett went down to check the doors. Down in the basement there was a huge mudroom area. It had a thick wooden door made of 2x4 planks, kinda like a barn door. The door had a big old lock on it, some spring-loaded turnbolt, and also had a plank to set across it, like a barricade. One of the guys was pounding on this door, and Brett heard him tell the other guy to go try the back door. This stupid door was one of those 1960s things that had a happy little square window right in the face level with a little curtain across it. I was at this door trying to jam a chair under the flimsy knob while I looked up and saw the unnamed guy just looking at me. I screamed, and the dispatcher asked me if I was okay. I barely squeaked out that one of the guys was looking right at me through the window. He was older than me, probably about 20, and he was tall, and he looked scary as hell. His dark eyes were drilling into me, and he wore this creepy placid smile on his face. I had never seen this man before, but he knew me by my name. He tapped on the window with his finger, never breaking eye contact, and said, "Becky, let me in." I couldn't breathe. The knob was rattling as he was messing with it. He said again, "Let me in, Becky. I just want to see if you are okay. I just want to talk to you." He stared right at me. I didn't say anything. I was just 3 feet from him, with my back pressed to the refrigerator, when he suddenly started beating on the door and screamed, "Let me the fuck in this house. If I have to break in, I will kill you both. So just open the fucking door." He looked like a maniac. Then there was a loud knock at the front door, and the man went silent. He gave me the most hateful sneer I had ever seen. I heard shouting, and he ran down the back stairs and into the woods along the back of my yard. Brett had gone to the door. It was the cops. There was 2 female officers at the front door. One was just starting to raise her voice, asking where I was when I came to the door too. I was so relieved. I started sobbing. I told them that they ran away through the woods. Luckily, the woods were not deep. They actually ran along the bank of a large river, and there was a bridge just from where the woods met the road. One officer ran around the back while one stayed to get a description and took a statement. Officer 1 came back and spoke to Officer 2, said she saw them running across the bridge. They both left in a hurry, hopped into the cruiser, and sped off. I was still crying and shaking, but I was absolutely furious at Brett for riling them up. I went to make myself some tea, thinking of all the ways I could kill my sister when she got home. I had so much anger, fear, and adrenaline pumping through me. I could have ripped her into shreds at that moment. 20 minutes later, the cruiser came back. There were 2 guys sitting in the back seat, and the officers wanted me to confirm it was the right guys. I looked through the window and saw them. They still looked terrifying to me. They were in cuffs and could not get to me, but I would not get close to them. Neither would look at me. I confirmed it was them, and we spoke a bit. I told the cops about my sister, suggesting that these men should come see me. Officer 2 kinda mumbled, "What a bitch." I had to agree. I pressed charges for attempted forcible entry, property damage, and attempted assault. Initially, they both pled not guilty, but later admitted to some of the charges. They both got 18 months in jail and were forbidden to contact me or my boyfriend ever again, and to be at least 500 meters from me at all times. I never heard from them again. I confronted my sister about it, and of course she denied it. Then she laughed about it. She was an awful person. I have no idea what their true intentions were, as they maintained that they were just there to talk to me. I'm thankful I didn't have to find out. So 2 strange guys that came to me and that just wanted to talk, let's never ever meet again.
I was hanging out at the park with a couple of friends just as we did every day after school let out, and we were pretty much doing what we always do, talking about guys, anime, and other stuff. We were sitting there on the swing smoking cigarettes and just chilling when this homeless guy comes up to us and asks for a cigarette, so I give him one out of my pack just to get rid of him, and it worked. He went about his business and walked off with a cigarette. This same thing went on for a few more days, same routine, hang out at the park, smoking, talking, etc. The same homeless guy would come up and bum a smoke from us, we'd give him one, and he'd leave, until one day, another homeless guy came up to us. This guy reeked of stale beer and piss and shit. His hair was natted up, and his beard had chewing tobacco in it. He came up to us and started talking about all kinds of gross things that he wanted to do to both of us, telling us that if he wanted to, he could have us right now. At first, we did not understand what he was talking about. I was young then, still in middle school, and though I liked boys and dated a few guys, I did not actually understand what any of it meant, or what it meant to love a guy or be intimate with a guy. And this disgusting creep was just talking about a bunch of nasty shit. He mentioned how he had just gotten out of prison for doing something terrible. I'm not going to go into details, just know it's worse than murder. Just read between the lines and you'll understand. My friend told him to leave us alone, or she'd call the cops. He then grabbed her by her hair and started yelling at her.
"You're gonna call the cops on me, you little fucking bitch?"
My friend squirmed and yelled for help.
"Oh, you're a fighter, aren't you? I like when they squirm."
And thankfully, by the will of God or pure luck, this big guy comes out of nowhere and starts beating the shit out of this homeless guy. The cops show up, and we were trying to explain to the cops that the guy was helping us, but it turns out that the big guy was a drug dealer, and the homeless man had stolen a bunch of drugs from him. So the big guy was going to kill this homeless guy. Even if the big guy's immediate intentions weren't to help two frightened middle school girls from being assaulted by a crazy drunk homeless man, we're thankful that he happened to come when he did. So to the creepy, disgusting, pedo homeless man, I hope you die in prison. Let's never meet again, because I carry a knife with me at all times, and I'll make you regret the day you were born. Everything happened last year in May. At the time, I was 15 years old and was in the 10th grade at high school. My high school has an afternoon program for the 9th and 10th graders. This meant that my classes started at 12 p.m. and I sometimes finished at 5 or 6 p.m. For 3 days on the 25th, the 26th, and the 27th of May, I have been attending a convention, East European Comic Con, which was really far away from home, on the other side of the city. To get there from home, I had to use the subway and the bus. Because the first day of the convention was the 25th, a Friday, I went directly from my high school with my best friend Mary, and stayed only 2 to 3 hours. I did not want to come home late, and I was really exhausted, because I finished my classes at 5:30 p.m. Everything was fine, and I came home really happy because I had lots of fun. The next day was the 26th, and it was a Saturday. Usually on the weekends, the subway, it's 10 times more empty, and the roads get busy only in the evening. I met my friend at the bus station in the morning at 9 a.m., and we went together to the convention. There we met other friends and stayed about 10 or 11 hours. She had to wait for her mom to pick her up, but my parents insisted that I had to get home using public transport. Clearly something my parents regret now. Everything was fine during the bus ride. I was listening to music, scrolling through Facebook, and just minding my own business. When I got to the subway, it was really empty. You could barely see people. It was 8 p.m. Because I had to change the through fare, I needed to walk about 5 minutes to get to the train that leads to the nearest station to my house. As I was waiting for the train, a man starts walking around me. He was in his 30s. He was looking pretty bad. He had red, puffy eyes and dirt on his hands and face. At first, he walked past me 3 times. I felt like he was walking in circles around me. As an instinct, I put my phone in my pocket and took off my headphones and unplugged them. The train arrived. It honestly felt like an eternity. I sat down and tried not to panic. He sat down right next to me. We were the only ones in the subway wagon. I thought to myself, Why would he sit right next to me when there were lots of empty seats? There was an old man that was sitting at the other end of the train. I wanted to get to him so I could feel a little better and safe. As I stood up, this dude literally grabbed my hand and pulled me really hard, and I fell back on the seat. He started smiling and said, "If you do not sit right here next to me, it's going to be bad, girl." I almost started crying. I tried to stay calm. I nodded, and he let go of my hand. And this time, I looked and examined him very well. He was wearing ripped jeans and a t-shirt with holes in it, and a jean jacket. He started asking me questions. How old am I? What's my name? Where am I coming from? What do I have in my bag, etc. He was speaking aggressively, and I did not know what to do. When he saw that I am not answering, he mumbled something and then started talking about his interests, Norse gods and Norse mythology. I don't know what made him talk about this topic, but I sat there listening. It's been about 10 minutes and I felt like I had no escape. I heard footsteps, and in that moment I look up and realize that the train was almost reaching the second to last station. The footsteps were coming from the old man that I saw earlier. He looked at me and said, "Where have you been? I've been calling and texting you for hours. Come on, we need to go home." I sigh in relief. I could hear the dude mumbling something again. Just before the train stopped, he asked me if I am willing to give him my phone number so we could chat again. I told him that I could not, and that I really had to go. The old man gave him a look, and we got off the train. We started walking towards the exit, and when we saw that the train left the station, we stopped. He looked at me and said, "Is this your station? Are you okay? Did he hurt you? Is there anything I can do for you? I saw the way he pulled you and heard the way he spoke and thought you need some help." I told the old man I had exactly one more station and that I am fine, just scared. He advised me that I should talk with a security guard and tell him what just happened, so I did. I kept thanking the old man for what he had done for me. I took the next train and I texted my dad and told him to pick me up from our subway station immediately. In about 3 to 4 minutes I got off the train. I was at my station. As I was climbing the stairs to reach the exit, I heard someone yelling, "You lying bitch!" I did not have time to turn around because I was knocked down. I screamed so hard and I started crying and started to sort of move to get this man off me. Because I talked to the security guard at the other station, 2 other security guards were waiting to check on me. They were equipped with a taser. When they heard me screaming, they rushed over and helped get me up, and they pulled the man down. They told me to call the police and wait for someone to take me home. I told them that my dad was upstairs, outside the underground area. I ran so fast to my dad and told him everything, and he called the cops. The man was arrested.
Alright, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead, like, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching.